Good morning. And welcome to Newark United Methodist Church on All Saints' Day, a day in which we look back on those who hopefully made us what we are. Sometimes we look back with joy and maybe sometimes with trepidation. And I got to thinking, what about the human family of Jesus, and what would Mary have thought about some of them? And I propose this morning to remind you of two or three of them. Hopefully we will gain something from looking at those who came before Jesus. Moses is dead. Joshua is now leading the people of Israel into the Promised Land to occupy it. They have been successful with Sihon and Og. Those kings have fallen, and Jericho is next. Joshua sends 2 spies into Jericho to scope the place out and see what is happening. They're found out that there's spies in the camp. They go to the home of Rahab the harlot. She agrees to help them in return if her family will be saved when occupation takes place or destruction takes place. They agree. She hides them under some straw during the day. Her home is on the edge of the wall of the city. She helps them down over the wall, tells the ruler of Jericho that they went in a different direction. The battle, you know about the walls falling down. Jericho has collapsed. Rahab's family is saved. And Rahab the harlot marries one of the spies that came into Jericho, and from their son Solomon was her husband, and from their son Boaz, they became ancestors of the human part of Jesus. We look then at Bethlehem in time of famine. There's a man named Elimelech, his wife Naomi. They had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. And because of the famine, they moved into the land of Moab. They were forbidden by Levitical law to have any contact with the Moab people at all. But when you're hungry, it makes a difference, I suppose. Time passes. The 2 sons marry Moabite women. One was named Orpah, the other was Ruth. During the time of their stay, both her husband and her sons pass away, and she is left with 2 widowed daughter-in-laws. The weather gets better, things looking up in Bethlehem, and she decides to go home. The 2 daughters-in-law decide to go with her. She tries to deter them and is successful in the fact that Orpah stays, but Ruth goes with her, and Ruth makes that beautiful statement, "Whither thou goest, I will go. Whether thou lodgest, I will lodge. Whether you die, I will die. Where you're buried, I'll be buried. Your God will be my God. Beautiful little passage there in Ruth. They get to Bethlehem, and I suppose to supplement the income and to maybe look for a husband, Ruth is gleaning in the fields of Boaz. In those days, what was left in the field was left there for people to come in and share in your bounty. And Boaz gets a good look at Ruth and decides that this is the lady of his life. He marries her, and through their son Obed, they become human ancestors of Christ. So to this point, we have a harlot and a Gentile in the background of Jesus. And then consider this young Jewish lady. I say Jewish, she was Canaanite by birth. Her name was Tamar, and be careful when you're reading about Tamar in the Bible, there's at least 3 of them. So you want to be sure you've got your place straight. She married a man named and for some reason, we're not told why, God slays him. And as the custom was, the next son in line would take the widow and raise a family for inheritance purposes and perhaps to take care of Tamar when she got old. His name was Onan. Onan was a slick rascal and avoided his job and responsibility, and God takes him. Now there's one son left, and he is underage, and so her father-in-law promises her that when Shelah becomes of age, that the law will be fulfilled. Time passes. Judah reneges. Tamar is unhappy. She disguises herself as a prostitute, hearing that he is coming into town, Judah, and she meets him. They have a conversation, agree on a price, ask for a pledge, which he gives her. And from this union, twins are born, Pharez and Zephra. And the older one of the two, through him, Pharez, Judah and his daughter-in-law become human ancestors of Christ. And then consider the greatest king of Israel, David, slayer of Goliath, writer of most of the Psalms. Israel has become a pretty fair nation, and they're in battle with the Amorites at this particular instance. David is out on the veranda of his palace, and he sees a woman, Hittite, named Bathsheba, lusts for her, sins for her, commits adultery. She becomes pregnant. In order to hide the fact, David is responsible for the death of Uriah, her husband. And from the union of David and Bathsheba comes Solomon. And through him, they become human ancestors of Christ. Now, a fair question for you to ask is, why pick those? With all of the 42 generations from Abraham to Jesus, you'd think the preacher could find somebody to talk about represented better than these. But there were two reasons I chose those. One of them is, I want you to be certain that no matter who your ancestors were, who your mom was and your dad was, it won't have any effect on your plans and your ability to live a successful Christian life. Number two was even more important. And that is, you think about God having sons and daughters, and he has many of them. But God doesn't have any grandchildren. So you are responsible for your own salvation in that effect. The second reason was to assure you this morning that whatever you have done or have been, whatever you are doing or whatever you are, you will never be removed from the miraculous grace of God. In your hymnal on page 365, there's an old hymn, and the refrain goes like this: grace, grace, God's grace. Grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's grace. Grace that is greater than all my sin. Peace.